This podcast is brought to you by Voice and Vision, bringing help, hope, and healing to individuals, families, and communities affected by mental illness, addictions, and disabilities in southeastern Pennsylvania.
Welcome to Untold Valor, a podcast with a unique focus on veterans, featuring stories of courage, recovery, perseverance, and strength. Listen to hear veterans share their perspectives on what it's like to battle mental health challenges, combat addictions, and overcome other adversities unique to those who have served.
It's time for another edition of Untold Valor Season 3 Best of Part 2. And we are coming back this time with our first clip up is Bart. He talks about his time as a drill sergeant and why it's important to embrace change. Let's take a listen. You've obviously saw a lot of things through your career, so you're a two-time combat veteran, one with the 101st Airborne in Iraq, one with the Joint Security, DMZ in Korea. You've got 2 Bronze Stars, one for Valor, the Legion of Merit. Like I said, I could read this thing and it would take 10 minutes. So you've seen a lot of different things in there. And through those many years, how did you kind of handle and process that, right? Because I think that's what a lot of our listeners of the podcast sometimes struggle with is their time in service, their time, out just when they first get out and that transition period, things like that. What are some of the things that you've seen along your distinguished career?
Just like any organization that's attempting to excel, there's going to be some evolution and there's going to be some change.
Mm-hmm.
Good, bad, right or wrong, there's always going to be some change. You try to mitigate the bad and the wrong and capitalize on the good parts of the change, and more importantly, embrace the change. So, if you are opposed to change, that's going to be very hard.
Yeah, true.
But if you embrace it, then it becomes a little easier, and you understand why things are happening. And I would tell you, as a leader, the higher I went up, the more I explained the why down to the lowest level. The privates need to understand what's going on, and every rank in between, they understand what's going on. So
great point.
I would make a point to explain the why. Now they understood. I didn't need them to agree. You're not going to sign something and say, okay, Storm Major, whoever, I agree. So thanks for explaining. Now I agree. Sign this. Doesn't work like that. But because I took the time to explain the why,
yeah,
then they were all in.
Yeah, you get the buy-in because they understand the why. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. And so when you're, as a drill sergeant, obviously, and as a leader, seeing the struggles, right, that a lot of, like you said, it's not for everybody, right? Sometimes people go in, they try to do it to better their life or for a living or whatever the case might be, and it doesn't fit, right? And maybe they struggled while in service and they struggle trying to get out and find their way out. Is that a lot of, is that some of the things that you saw and experienced as well?
Yeah, I feel like as a drill sergeant time and beyond, as a leader, you have some pride in what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And I never let people quit, not just on me. I took it personal that you quit it on me, but more importantly, I wouldn't allow them to quit on themselves. It's easy. It could be easy if you knew the right tools of writing, et cetera, to put people out of the military. And you can find a way if you want to find a way, and they'll help you. But I was never for that. I'm trying to make you stay in because you raised your hand, you signed up to do it.
Right.
And you come up with some kind of weak excuse of not being motivated, whatever the reason is to not do it. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to buy that. You're not going to quit on me, which really means quitting on themselves. So I took that personal at every level. What can we do to make you better? There's something in you, and I know it's in you, that we can utilize as a whole to make you better and fulfill your obligation to the military, which you signed up for from the very beginning.
That's a great point. Yeah,
be successful in doing that. And the point of not allowing them to quit on themselves is very instrumental when they get out of the military. Now you're going to learn something in the 3 years, 4 years. I don't care how long you've been in. You're going to learn something that you can use on the outside. Mm-hmm. For a person, they will all share that they have learned something that they can utilize, to the point where they are conflicted with how I'll say corporate society operates in the workplace and how it differs from how it was in the military of teamwork, camaraderie, and all those types of things. They're struggling to find that same structure on that outside that does not exist. They don't care about that stuff. They care about you coming to work, doing whatever they pay you to do, stay in your lane of doing it, and then that's it. There's no camaraderie. There's no mission accomplishment of one goal and rowing all together. There's none of that.
And next up on this episode of Untold Valor Best of Season 3 Part 2, we've got Jeremy talking about why he decided to join the service and his post-military career with Mighty Oaks. Give us a quick kind of backstory real fast on yourself and also then on Mighty Oaks. We had Chad actually on about a year ago, and he's part of this organization as well. So just kind of clue us in a little bit again on what's going on with Jeremy and what's going on with Mighty Oaks.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. Man, I'll give you the flyover because all of us have a story. It's funny, my bio, I send it, I'm always like, man, I need to shorten that thing. I think all of us have a long bio, right?
Right.
We don't always sit down and write it out, and there are a lot of things that happen in our lives. And I always reminded at how God uses the seemingly disjointed pieces of our life to bring us to exactly where he wants us to be.
Great point.
And I grew up in a very conservative Christian home. My dad was actually a pastor. And I always joke that the one thing you learn growing up in a pastor's home is that you don't want to be a pastor. That's the one thing you learn. And it is a joke, right? I am very grateful for my parents and what they did. And as a kid, I watched how hard they worked and how dedicated they were, and was proud of them, but knew that's not the route that I felt called to. Didn't come from a military family, but had some military influences in my life. Some of those were books. In fact, a lot of those were books. My son, who's 14, asked me a couple weeks ago, did you watch a lot of videos on the military and a lot of movies? And that's why, no, there were no videos. There weren't a lot of movies, and I didn't have access to the ones that existed. But I read a lot of books and read a lot of stories and started to understand that there were people who had gone before us that gave their lives to something big and important.
Yeah.
And then we had, when I was younger, had some World War II veterans in my life, and I'd sit and hear stories. And long story short, ended up going to college because my parents wanted me to go to college before I did anything else. And then I was commissioned as an officer in the Marine Corps out of college, served with 1st Battalion, 5th Marines, an infantry unit based out of Camp Pendleton here in Southern California. Did a number of things. My last deployment was to Iraq in 2003 and was part of the initial movement into Iraq. 1st Infantry Battalion into the country was ours. Breached the berm, moved into the country March 19th and 20th, 2003, and made our way to Baghdad and came home. And so that was my last deployment, which is it's a banger, right? That's the way to go out.
Yeah.
And had already made the decision before going to Iraq, and there was a lot wrapped up in that decision, but had already made the decision to get out, came home, and a month later, literally, boots back on the ground here in the United States. A month later, I was out of the Marine Corps, and of all things, went to work at a church.
I was getting ready to say, you made the comment about not wanting to be a pastor, and I see on your bio that you are a pastor.
Yeah, they joke or they say if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans, right? Like, I'm not doing that. And and there's a lot wrapped up in that, of course, and a lot of years of influence. But
sure.
God brought us around and brought us to a place where I left the Marine Corps, went to work at a church, and then eventually pastored a church for a number of years. And man, in all of that, I had to deal with some things personally and had to, try to find myself and had really some difficulties doing that and had some good people step into my life. And a big part of me moving forward after the Marine Corps was not looking back at the Marine Corps. I didn't stay connected to anyone. I didn't, I didn't do the normal stuff.
You kind of needed separation.
Yeah, I needed that separation and did. But what that meant was after 10 years of being out of the Marine Corps, I wasn't connected to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
But a guy who I had served with reached out to me through Facebook. Again, 10 years after we had left the Marine Corps. And he said, hey, I met this guy, Chad Robichaux, and he's starting this organization for veterans. He's a Marine combat veteran. He's starting this thing, and he has invited some of us to come to be a part of this program. And we can talk about Mighty Oaks, but at that time, Chad and his family were starting Mighty Oaks, and they were trying to figure out what that was going to look like and trying to get some people to attend to help figure that out, right?
Sure, yeah.
And they had an idea, they wanted to help, but they didn't know exactly what that was going to look like. And so I ended up there and some great things happened while I was there. One of those was I met Chad, got to know him, understood his vision, his hope for Mighty Oaks, what it would be and what that would look like. And he and his family had been working at that for about a year up to that point. And he asked me if I'd come along and help. He was putting it together. Chad's very charismatic. He does a great job of getting people together and was doing that then, but needed help with developing curriculum and teaching and training teachers and doing those kind of things. So that was my background. That's what I had been a part of. And so we started working together, and eventually I left the church that I was pastoring to take a full-time position with Mighty Oaks.
That's
and
awesome.
That was all over the course of years. But
yeah,
so that's the 30,000 foot level. But man, it's been quite a journey.
And finally, we've got Dartanyun. He talks about his military background and how he got his position as a DVOP specialist once he left the service.
It looks like you've got quite a bit here on your bio, so I'll just kind of let you fill us in a little bit about, just a little bit about you is where we typically start. Tell us how you got involved with the service and then kind of how your life evolved and shifted, and then what you're up to now. So we'll work our way through that. I see that you've been you're helping out with the Disabled Veterans Outreach Program in the Commonwealth there, Pennsylvania, for a couple of years. So that's awesome. We'll get to some of that in just a minute, but kind of back us up a little bit and tell us a little bit about you.
Okay. Well, I'm a vet of the Army. I did 12 years. I kind of joined because I really didn't know what else to do.
Sure.
I started seeing a lot of my friends getting in trouble. So, my friend group started shrinking. And then I figured, if I didn't do something different, it's only a matter of time that I'll kind of, it'll come for me as well.
Right.
So I ended up enlisting, and I remember I told my brother, because I was excited when I enlisted, and then I was excited about the cash bonus that I got. And then he told me, anytime you pick a job and they give you a large cash bonus, you're going overseas. And then literally, once I was done training, 6 months later, I got tagged to go over to Iraq for Operation Iraqi Freedom.
Okay.
I wasn't scared. I kind of always have a mindset of I have to see the situation first before I make any assumptions. So I did a year out there, split between working at the fuel farm when I had to certify the fuel reports that was going in, that was going out.
Oh, yeah.
And we also finished off in the amnesty yard. So basically, we'll open up containers of leftover equipment, and then we'll see what was serviceable and what we can get back in the system. When I came back home, I was still in the reserve. So I, flipped a little bit between jobs to try to see where I can fit at. I worked as a flavorist for a company before, making different kinds of seasonings and candy flavors. I spent time as a plumber, but then I knew about 2016, my girlfriend got pregnant. And I wanted to find an easier way to, help to pretty much support my family. So I ended up becoming an army recruiter.
Okay, yeah.
So that was something I was actually good at. Being in the reserves, I was already used to, talking with people day by day. So I really didn't have the issue going into schools or colleges and communicating. I won Recruiter of the Quarter 2 or 3 times. And then towards the end of my trend as an Army recruiter, one of my coworkers committed suicide.
Yeah.
At that point, that's when I kind of made the decision, maybe, this military thing ain't really for me, because, it affected a lot of things. It affected my performance. It affected the way that I thought and everything. So 2019, I didn't re-enlist and I got out. That was a difficult time because you go from making a certain amount to having to start over again. I just bought my house earlier that year. I was taking care of my son that was 2. My stepson was 8. So, once we landed down, I got my family together and I let them know hey, things is going to be a little tight for a minute because, I'm not making as much money as I was when I was in.
Sure.
And I still gotta, figure out where I'm going to be at. I worked for a plumber for a while. I really didn't like that too much, but I picked up some skills to be able to perform maintenance in my own house. So that was a good thing.
Yeah, it's always good to be able to work around the house. That's for sure.
Yes. One thing that you'll always notice when it comes to veterans, every time you look at the resume, you'll always see like a trend of bouncing in between different industries. So that's a trend that you'll see with every vet. And normally it's because we're trying to, find where we fit at. We're just trying to find that right square. So I can't remember who, but somebody called me and they was like, hey, there's a disabled veteran outreach program position with the PA Career Link of Delaware County. We think you'll be a good fit for it. I never knew what a DVOP was. I really didn't learn much about veteran benefits until some older vets pushed me to learn about it.
Okay.
I applied for the position and I got it. The turning point was Delaware County haven't had a DVOP in years. So a lot of places that the old DVOP did outreach with, those partnerships wasn't built anymore. Even the leadership team really couldn't tell me what to do. So because they didn't know. So when I asked questions like, hey, what am I supposed to be doing? They told me, I don't know, do DVOP stuff. Luckily, I was able to rely on my recruiter background. So I said, okay, well, as an Army recruiter, the first thing I did was, area canvassing. I got to pull reports and stuff like that to see how many veterans in this area, where the veterans is at. And then also I got to see which places service veterans. So from doing that, I ended up making a lot of partnerships. So my job as a DVOP is to help a veteran overcome barriers and then become employment ready.
Gotcha. I was going to say, what was the focus? Is that the focus for employment typically?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm supposed to help them overcome their barriers and become employment ready.
Gotcha.
So there's a counterpart that's called a local veterans employment rep, or called a leaver, but Delaware County never had one. So then I was facing a problem like, okay, well, I don't have a leaver and I can help the veterans get job ready, but then, what happens at that point? I can't just leave them hanging out. The state have a lot of strong guidelines as far as, a DVOP can't do a leaver job, a leaver can't do a DVOP job, vice versa. So the leaver is supposed to make partnerships with employers and then create those positions. So once the DVOP get the veteran job ready, we'll have a meeting, the DVOP, the veteran, and the leaver, and then we'll place them in a position with one of the employers that we made partnerships with.
Gotcha.
So I had to get a bit more creative. So when I started making partnerships, I made partnerships with other veteran organizations, but then also I opened it up to if they had any friends who was, veteran friendly or a veteran owned business. So that way I can make the referral, but I'm not exactly doing outreach and connecting with employers. So my first year, I was working Delaware County, Philadelphia County, Montgomery County, and Bucks County because I was only DVOP. And I got approximately 45 to 50 vets hired that year.
Oh, that's good. That's awesome.
It's a process. Going through the same thing, you kind of understand. I had one kid who just got his bachelor's in human resources, and he kept getting interviews, and then he'll make it to the second interview, then he won't be selected. He'll make it to the second interview, he won't be selected. So there's a time when, he kind of went down on himself. So I just kept encouraging, like, hey, listen, this is how it is. I went through the same thing. I know how you feel. You went through all these interviews, and then at the end of the day, they keep telling you that they want, they pick someone else. I know how it feels. You can't give up. If you stop now, you're going to have to go through the whole process over again.
Yeah, so you kind of coach them and kind of work with them towards, maybe how to interview better and things of that nature.
Yes.
Yeah.
So one of the qualifications to become a DVOP or a leaver is you have to be a veteran. So at first, a lot of people really didn't understand, but when you look into it, it kind of makes sense because in the Career Link, we have all different kind of partners. We have other partners that do with employment, training, and things of that matter. But you will notice when a veteran talks to a non-veteran versus when they talk to a veteran, the conversations are two different things. And then also it comes to a point of accountability. So if a veteran is working with a career counselor that's not a veteran, sometimes that non-veteran career counselor won't say the hard things that the vet needs to hear.
Yeah.
Versus if he was working with a veteran, like, hey, listen, we both know what we need to do here. you got to pick yourself up. You're falling behind.
Yeah. So you
can,
talk the talk and walk the walk and all that good stuff. Yeah.
So we can hold each other accountable.
Yeah.
So I kind of liked it because it felt as though I was making an impact. I was, helping and changing people.
And to wrap things up this week here on Untold Valor, Season 3, Part 2 of Best Of. As always, if you've got questions, you need some help, if some of these stories resonated with you and you're looking for a way to make some changes or need to make some changes, or you just want to talk with someone who's walked the walk and talks the talk, reach out to some of the resources and contacts we have available in the show descriptions below on each and every episode. And thank you so much for listening to Untold Valor, Veterans Recovery in Action.
You've been listening to Untold Valor by Voice and Vision. We hope you found the information and resources discussed today helpful. As always, thank you for listening and for your support. Remember to stay connected with us through our various social media platforms, including Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Don't forget to visit the website, voiceandvisioninc.org. That's voiceandvisioninc.org, where you can sign up for our blog and find free resources and information on upcoming events, webinars, workshops, and get support. You can also access our free help and hope guide for individuals and families struggling with substance use and addiction. If someone you know is struggling, please reach out for help because you and your life matter. Remember, the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is available to you at any time by dialing 988. We are all ambassadors of hope and recovery. And if you want to share your story, please contact us. Compeer Corps is also looking for veteran mentor volunteers and veteran participants. To find out more information about Compeer Corps, please call 610-541-0790. That's 610-541-0790. You can find all the links and contact information for the resources mentioned on today's episode by checking the description and the show notes section of your app. Thank you again for tuning in and for your support. Until next time, this has been Untold Valor.